The stage is set. The ruler has invaded Suplex City, and they will clash in Vegas at WrestleMania. We're going to talk about that and a lot more. This is WrstlXtra. Yo, this is WrstlXtra. I'm your boy, A Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate, always joined by my trios team. We've got Mex, the WrestleManiac, if you will. Who? And of course, and of course, the man that knows it all. He is Gerard Bonner. Guys, how are we feeling today? Today is a great day. I woke up very happy and excited. You know, let's just get into it. Gerard, just talk me through the feelings you felt as you saw the lights dim and then those green lights come up and that music hit.
Well, let me start by saying I had the privilege of being there live last night. And the feeling in that space was electric. Shout out, first of all, you know, I know WWE people have had all kinds of thoughts about the road to WrestleMania and the like, but they really did their good work with this, starting off with Seth. And all of those guys, I thought, served as an amazing decoy for what was about to happen. Because I don't think any of us started to feel like this was going to turn into OBA Brock based on the Seth piece. You know, and then Seth is, which let me just say this. All of those guys showing up like that, it really feels very menacing. Like, it was just like, ooh, okay. And then just Brock throwing everybody around. And I've got a recap reel that's going to hit in about an hour or so. And you guys will get to see my view of Brock throwing these guys around. It was crazy, crazy. But here it is. Now we're thinking, okay, it's going to be Brock and Seth. And we kind of forgot that Seth still isn't medically cleared. So the lights dim, and I actually thought they were going to commercial. Like, I didn't know what was going on. And then Oba's music hit. Good Lord. It was insane. And again, kind of the moment that everybody's talking about is Oba hitting a pop-up power bomb on Brock Lesnar. The reaction from Michael Cole, you know, dropping an expletive, which you never hear him do. It was that kind of moment. It was that kind of moment. Shout out to Kofi Kingston, whose Twitter post was everything. It was just, you know, finally avenge us. Yes. You know, like that's the thing. I mean, we've talked about on this show kind of the Brock Lesnar effect to black champions in WWE, and it's as though no one has been able to kind of have a comeback for it. And here comes Oba. Count me all the way in. It was an incredible moment. What a beautiful way to set this up. I actually thought we wouldn't get it until he answers the open challenge at WrestleMania, but I love the way they pulled this off last night. It was brilliant.
It was absolute cinema. And, you know, even before the lights and before we knew Oba was coming out, even just the bit with Paul Heyman coming out.
Oh,
the
yes.
way he looked.
Yes.
Today. That in itself was amazing. You know, you had everything that he said, and we kind of just thought that more than likely, and there was rumors kind of spreading around the last couple of weeks or whatever else, that it was gonna possibly be you know, possibly Seth versus Brock at Mania, based on all the things that haven't gone the right way with the vision and all the rest of it. And I feel as though that at that point, as soon as Brock music's hit, I was like, yeah, this is what's happening at Mania. That's what we're getting.
Yeah.
Then the lights dim, And you know what? I just thought Seth would disappear. There'd be a whole
Right.
load of guys in the ring when the lights come up. I completely forgot about Oba. And then that music hit. And I was like, wait.
Yeah.
Mex, what were your thoughts as that whole thing kind of played out?
Like, yeah, I feel like he's the person that really puts in like that extra effort with selling distress and all that kind of stuff. So that was really nice. No, not shaven, paint color, blood. I thought it would look great. When Lesnar came out to avenge Paul Heyman, ultimately, it makes sense. Like that is his standing ally from long time, and I'll be quite honest with you, I was absolutely fine with that being the WrestleMania direction with Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar. It's a big match. What I didn't think was too great was just the direction of, I loved Brock Lesnar chucking people around. I will always love that as a trope. And for whatever reason, since I've literally been a child, whenever he's doing that, I have to watch through my hands because he literally throws human beings around. Like they're falling and landing, which some will say is irresponsible, but for me, that is the beauty of Brock Lesnar, like believability factor. So I was watching this segment pretty much through my hands, my fingers. I didn't like Rollins sticking around in there though, because Rollins can't be physical. It's just like, okay, him and Lesnar just staring at each other now when really Brock should be attacking him. So when the attack began, I think Rollins should have probably used then as a chance to put the hood back on and jump through the crowd basically and get away. Or when the lights went down, Rollins should have left at that point. So yeah, I don't really like that of him sticking around. I just thought it was just a bit awkward. But what came afterwards with Oba Femi, again, I just didn't think it was going to happen until the lights went down. Then I thought, oh, it's gonna be Oba. One thing that I did pick up on and I put on my Instagram is that obviously they posed this firstly as an open challenge, and we didn't know how this was going to look going into WrestleMania. Yesterday morning on WWE's website, they changed it when they're doing their advertising for Brock Lesnar's going to be on Raw. It actually said Brock Lesnar is going to find out his WrestleMania opponent on Raw on WWE's website. So from then I thought, and we all know, the saga with the lack of ticket sales. I thought they've decided they have to kind of promote something at this point. They can't just leave people going in blindly. They need to sell this show. So I thought it's got to be Oba Femi. But then we saw the segment with Rollins. It wasn't Oba Femi. Listen, I'm rambling. I have a wife. I have kids, but that man excites me. that man, Oba Femi. Yeah, there is something when he steps into the arena that is just, it's Brock Lesnar-ish. It's like, oh my god, business is about to pick up. Like he's a special kind of cat, and it's been this kind of slow-ish but not terrible, just a slowish start to his main roster life. But this is something now for us to sink our teeth into and get excited about.
It's one of those things that I was very happy that it happened the way it did, every bit of it, every second of it, because I love that whole suspense and kind of almost being tricked, being punked, because as I said, I was convinced. As soon as Brock came out for Seth, I was convinced, okay, that's the WrestleMania match. And like you said, I wasn't upset about it. A little bit disappointed because I've been expecting and wanting the Oba Brock thing and all of that. And there were other things as well about, when Brock came out and there's the open challenge and we're like, is this the right way for them to do it and all that kind of stuff. But the way it went down last night was absolute perfection. I don't know. Gerard, you can probably tell us this. I don't know. Has Brock Lesnar ever been powerbombed before?
Not like that. I mean, he's been thrown around a couple times. He's had his moments with the Big Show and things of that nature. But powerbombed? No, not that I can remember.
I would assume Undertaker in his biker gimmick taker back in 2002 would have maybe powerbombed him. Maybe. I can't say as a certainty that I've seen anything like that.
And I would
slam for sure.
Choke slam for sure. We've seen, you know, attitude adjustment, and you know, another version of an F5 from Cena, of course, but a power and that dominance, and before even having any kind of fight or punch up or a hurt Brock Lesnar or anything like that. And then on top of all of that, the guy puts his feet on the man's chest and points to the WrestleMania logo. If that isn't a sign of what's to come, I don't know what is. And I would beg the question, it begs the question, is it a clear sign of things to come? Or could there be a possibility, you know, of course there is a possibility we're having a match, but could there be a possibility of Brock Lesnar coming out of WrestleMania as the winner? There has been rumors of Paul Heyman and Brock seemingly wanting Brock to go undefeated until he actually has his retirement match. Mex, do you think that what happened last night tells us exactly what's going to happen, or what the end result is going to be at Mania?
It like Brock Lesnar would be a terrible businessman if he's going to win this match at WrestleMania.
Correct.
Like, Brock understands the business. As much as people give him stick for being a part-timer and any other kind of misdemeanor extracurricular activity he takes part in, Brock Lesnar understands wrestling. That man is a formidable wrestler. Even the sell job for that power bomb, like, he wanted to get FEMI over. Like, there is no reason on this earth that Brock Lesnar should win that match at WrestleMania. Like, I've gone as far, I've done a video today, it's gonna come out later, that I've gone as far as saying that I would love a squash, but we probably won't get one. Like, give them a battle, that's absolutely fine with me, that FEMI wins, but yeah, there is nothing for a Brock Lesnar win here. And if they wanted to book Brock Lesnar to win, he shouldn't be facing FEMI. It's as simple as that. Like, you cannot just stop in his tracks one of your hottest prospects, your hottest stars. Like, when it was time for The Rock to lose to Brock Lesnar, The Rock done the necessary. Like, Brock Lesnar knows how this goes, innit? So there isn't any reason that this should happen. Like, and with 4 or 5 weeks left till Mania at this point, and 4 or 5 weeks of Brock Lesnar being on TV every week until Mania, I have advocated Lesnar should batter him. Let me just use that word. He should absolutely batter him at some point in the next 4 weeks. So that's like, it's kind of like 1-1, and then you have the WrestleMania match. Like, FEMI shouldn't maybe just walk in, you know, a clean slate. He should definitely feel Lesnar's power and wrath, and then the WrestleMania match is ultimately the decider. But no, not for me. Brock, there's I don't see any reason or any case anyone can give that Brock Lesnar should win at WrestleMania.
Gerard, how detrimental is it for a Brock win at Mania?
I think, again, much to Mex's point, like, there's no scenario where it makes sense. I mean, you're talking about somebody who at this point will have been in the business 24 years. 24 years since we first saw Brock Lesnar on our television screen in 2002. There's nothing left for him to do, you know? And so you think about it, how detrimental would it be? Well, you know, FEMI has won a ridiculous amount of matches. I mean, if we think about, when has Oba been pinned? I only think about Tony D'Angelo when he won the North American Championship, Ricky Saints when he won the NXT Championship. There are very few people who can ever say they beat FEMI. For Oba to have been billed as he is, as clearly the proverbial next big thing, the mountain for him to climb is FEMI. Excuse me, is Brock Lesnar. Very much Brock has to get his lick back before we walk into WrestleMania. And I mean, it needs to be the kind of beating where you go, oh yeah, this is Brock Lesnar. And oh yeah, Oba is going to have some problems here. And it should be Clash of the Titans when they get to WrestleMania. But there is, I say if the choice is made for Brock Lesnar to win this match, they will literally undo everything they've done for for Oba Femi for the last 2 years. Completely undo. Completely undo. You have made this man the most dominant man to ever come out of NXT. This man held the North American Championship for an extremely long amount of time, the most dominant NXT championship reigns we've ever seen. For him to come in and to be platformed in his WrestleMania debut against Brock Lesnar, to have him dominate the Royal Rumble, dominate all of these people, and this is his first Mania opponent, and he loses, you've completely destroyed the aura of Oba Femi. Just completely. So absolutely, I won't say they've painted themselves into a corner, but Oba Femi, if you sell these tickets to WrestleMania, and like yesterday, they put tickets on sale 31% off yesterday, 31.6% off yesterday in honor of 360. They are doing all they can to sell these tickets. And I get it, right? You didn't have this problem last year. So you cannot get these 60,000 people in that stadium, have people strutting with Oba, and then all of a sudden he loses. Please. They will have so much bad press from that. This is very much people making a decision to go to Las Vegas to watch Oba Femi topple Brock Lesnar. That's the only way.
In the grand scheme of things, what is the bigger match? Is it Oba Femi versus Brock Lesnar, or is it Brock Lesnar versus Seth Rollins?
Oh, that's easy. That's easy. It's clearly Oba Femi versus Brock. Here's why. One of the things that makes pro wrestling work is our imagination, right? So, it's why we love the WWE 2K26 and any other video game, because we get to make dream matches. We do podcasts to, dream, to extrapolate, like what would actually happen. We've seen Seth versus Brock before, right? So there's no need to get excited about that. But the idea that these two are going to clash, we've not had anybody in WWE that seems to be the heir apparent to Brock Lesnar. There's nobody who's been built that way. There's nobody who has that level of athleticism. There's nobody who's believable. Shoot, think a couple of years ago when they put Omos in there, right? Like we didn't salivate over that, but it was something that was so different that we were like, all right, we gotta at least see what's he gonna do with a giant of this nature. But this right here, oh man, it is the dream match. We've seen Seth versus Brock before at a WrestleMania, no less. But this, oh no, this is clearly the bigger match.
Mex, do you think it's a bigger match to us because we know what's happened at the minute? We've seen Seth Brock before. Seth is kind of uncleared at the moment, and all those types of things. We've seen the rise of Oba Femi. But what if in a casual wrestling fan's mind who only watches WrestleMania or who only watches the pay-per-views or probably only tunes in a couple of weeks before, do you think that makes a difference to them as well?
If it's a casual person, ultimately, this is also the bigger match, because just looking at it from a size point of view, these two massive guys that are going to go and beat the crap out of each other is definitely more going to be up your street and more entertaining than someone that you're going to look at, and you're going to look at maybe a David versus Goliath type prospect. Seth Rollins is going to have to use his brain to find a way to beat Brock Lesnar, as opposed to you're just looking at two guys and you have no previous investment. just like, yeah, I'll have some of that. I'll watch that sort of thing. If you're flicking through the channel and you just come across that, I'm staying to watch who's gonna get beaten up or who's not. You see what I mean? So I think just from that point of view, it's the bigger match. It's the bigger match for the future of the company. That we've talked about it for maybe the past year now, about the lack of younger level top stars. This is their opportunity to crown one, to kind of show us their pipeline ultimately. And if they have a man that's retiring later this year, put a stop in that. It makes no sense while you're kind of show us the future of the company. You need to use this almost as a case study for those kids doing the Neil program, for those kids in NXT, for people in AEW that you want to bring in one day, for people in TNA you want to bring in one day, and other indies that we are promoting the youth and stuff like that. You need to use this as a case study for Black people to show them that, you know, we are still pushing you forward in the WWE. Don't believe, you know, what the internet may tell you and Triple H doesn't like Black people, whatever the case is. We are going to put one over strong here against, you know, a name that, like Gerard said, 24 years in the business. He's been at the top level for 24 years. He has won seven or eight world championships in the WWE. He has won IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. The guy even left the business, went to UFC and won their World Heavyweight Championship. Like, Oba Femi needs to beat this man and transfer the power. Those Thanos rings need to go and be on Oba Femi's hand.
Yes.
Like, and that's why this is so, you know, for us culturally, it's massive. Look at Kofi's tweet. For the future of the business, it's massive. Like, this is a power shift that we should be witnessing at WrestleMania. Like, a lot hinges on this, in my opinion, and you know, people's interest in the product going forward.
Given everything that we saw last night on Raw, you know, a lot of the stories further going further on, we have a bit more of an idea of what we're expecting at WrestleMania. The madness that we saw on SmackDown with Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes, all of that. Do you feel as though we are now firmly on the road to WrestleMania? Because there have been so many questions. We've mentioned so many times the lack of ticket sales. Certain things were very, you know, confusing, not sure what we're doing, all these kinds of things. Do you feel as though now we're getting onto that real road to WrestleMania?
Oh, we're definitely on the road. There's no doubt about it. I think, you know, historically, we've always looked at these shows leading to WrestleMania as pivotal, and that's the case. I think what can be seemingly unclear with 4 weeks left is, what does the rest of the card look like? Yeah, we're pretty sold on 2 world title matches, which honestly, you know, I don't know which one main event Saturday or Sunday, because on one hand, the WWE Championship is the historic title that, you know, usually main events on the last night. But CM Punk and Roman is such a massive story that it has suddenly made the World Championship that much more important. This is probably the biggest World Championship match at a WrestleMania ever. Easy. Because of the star power that's involved. So we know we have those 2. We know the 2 women's world title matches. Outside of that, and of course, Oba versus Brock, outside of those 5 matches, we don't have a clue where we're landing. Which is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it means we've got to watch Raw and SmackDown every week to see what's going on. But are we on the road? Absolutely we are. And I'm excited to see where this is going to take us. Where are we, you know, as we were talking about these new stars, where are we going to see Trick Williams land at WrestleMania? It seems like we could be going down the route of R-Truth and Damian Priest getting a tag team title shot. That could, but you've got this thing with the Wyatt Six kind of looming. All right, so there's all of these interesting things. You got the women's tag team championships, which shout out to Lash Legend. You know, but it's like where does all of that go? The Bella twins are involved, but then you've got 3 other teams that could find themselves involved. So there's definitely some things still to be worked out, but that's why we're watching the road for the next 4 weeks to see where we ultimately land. So we're definitely on the road to WrestleMania.
Quickly, is that I don't like the smash glass in case of emergency attitude. They need to sell tickets, and now they are pulling out all the stops. TV the last few weeks has been really, really good with some big angles, some big changes. Like we said, Raw yesterday was really, really good. SmackDown was really good with that closing angle as well. But it's complacency, because you thought these tickets are going to fly and you haven't seen, and you've started doing things, changing titles, and we've had to call on Cody for a 3rd year in a row. Hey Cody, do you mind bleeding before we get to Mania, like to really get us invested? Like, these guys can tell stories, these guys can write them, and they can tell them that the talent is formidable up and down the card. They just need the permission of the writers to tell the necessary stories. Like, stop waiting till we need to sell tickets before you are really committing to telling some good stuff and giving us really good TV. It's definitely feeling like Mania season now for me personally. I'm getting excited over what I've seen over the last few weeks, but we could have been telling these really good stories for the past 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Like, it doesn't all need to come in one dose, because now we need to get to the pay-per-view.
Forget the whole Royal Rumble or the end of Royal Rumble being the indicator that we're on the road to WrestleMania. I think Cody bleeding is the real indicator for WrestleMania.
Yeah.
3 years in a row now. You know what I mean? It's definitely that. You mentioned all this stuff about, being complacent and kind of smashing the emergency glass. But do you think that is just complacency, or also a matter of circumstance with so many injuries, so many things like, we've said so many times about with Bianca being injured, that was probably already written down as a Mania match, or Seth Rollins as well being another one, Braun Breaker and the rest of the division kind of up in arms and up in smoke and whatever else. Do you think it's just simply down to lack of ticket sales, or is it also injuries?
No, yeah, they've definitely been victims of circumstance. We can't pretend that hasn't been a thing. But at the same time, I think it goes back to the writing. Like, you can't tell me you put the title on Jade, right? That's the beginning. The destination is a WrestleMania match with Bianca. And then obviously you've got to paint the story in between. Oh no, Bianca goes down, or oh no, Bianca's not going to be ready. What's next? Like, what is next? Like, Jade has now been the victim of people saying the title reign's rubbish and this, that, and the other, because they haven't created anything else. She's had a match with Jordan Grace for the title, which was a good match. She had a match with Michin, which was a good match last week. She won that, but the title wasn't on the line. She hasn't been given the opportunity to be a champion. She's just holding the belt, like Jordan Grace has said, babysitting the belt. Like, they can't just look how quickly they move with the men. This person goes down, we're going to usher this person in. This person goes down, we're going to usher this person in. Why isn't it the same with the likes of a Jade and stuff? So yeah, injuries has been a thing, but I think at the same time, it's like you were never truly invested in maybe this person beyond the match, which was the destination, because you didn't move quickly to, they immediately pulled Rhea Ripley out of her tag team and give her the Elimination Chamber. They can sell us on whatever they want up till Mania. Jade might just retain at WrestleMania. Brilliant for Jade, but then what? They just pulled Rhea Ripley into this just to sell us on Mania. And then once we're at Mania, we can do whatever we want and do anything afterwards. You see what I mean? So although injuries are 100% this year, it seems like even, more than usual has been a problem. I just still think that, for certain things they care, for other things they're just letting happen and go to the wayside. Jade and Rhea, as an example, still a massive match on paper, but I just feel like, we had a couple of weeks of stuff with even Charlotte Flair. Charlotte Flair and Jade, in my opinion, would have been a bigger, better story to tell, with almost like Jade wanting the approval of Charlotte Flair. I want your attention. I want you to kind of, see me as your peer, rather than pulling Rhea Ripley out of a tag team quickly. Again, it's like break glass in case of emergency, produce Rhea Ripley, #1 contender.
Very, very true. Because at the same time, a name like Charlotte Flair I would feel, would still bring in as many tickets as a Rhea Ripley. And it's a little bit more to do with the situation Rhea Ripley was in as a tag team champion, of course. All kind of changing all of that didn't need to happen when you've got a Charlotte Flair who could have, given us a good match with Jade and a good story and all the rest of it.
Yeah. I know they don't want to throw Charlotte into it because Charlotte is doing a good tag team thing now, and they don't want to make Charlotte look like I'm chasing world titles again, sort of thing. So I know there's that, but then all the teasing between Jade and Charlotte from the minute Jade has arrived, why have you been doing it?
Right. Like and at the same time as well, you still had Charlotte and Alexa still kind of like, being the best of friends, but still kind of, at disagreements. And, recently with Alexa going for a singles bout and getting in the Elimination Chamber and Charlotte didn't, that still could have been, that story still could have worked very easily. Very, very easily still could have worked. Let me ask you this last question on all of this as well then. Do you think it was the right move for WWE to take the belt from Drew McIntyre, give it to Cody, and then on top of that, turn Randy Orton heel?
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's a tough one. I personally wanted to see Drew go into WrestleMania as the WWE champion. I wanted to see what was going to happen with Cody not being in the main event of WrestleMania.
Right.
I think given, we've been seeing him in the main event since 39, 3 straight WrestleManias in the main event. And of course, his comeback in 38. So it's like, let's just see where WWE has evolved and developed to without Cody as the WWE champion. Now, there's an argument, okay, was Drew versus Randy Orton a bigger match than Cody versus Randy Orton? Obviously not, right? So, but I think for the sake of Drew McIntyre, to see, could he do this? Could he be the guy that would, bring the people in and the like? We'll likely never know. Now, here's the other thing that was going on with that. There was still this story, of course, involving Drew and Jacob Fatu. There was Cody and Jacob Fatu, which that still hasn't been resolved. So there were multiple ways that I think they had potential to go with that. With that said, I do not like Randy Orton as the heel in all of this. Cody Rhodes, this is how this should have happened, in my opinion. They should have had a very respectful, I love the promo. Cody is the boy of Randy. I'll always love you. Randy, I really need this. All of the things. We get to the match. Randy wins the WWE Championship. And all of these things that Sami Zayn has been saying and all these other people have been saying finally gets to Cody. And we have our massive moment of Cody turning heel at WrestleMania. That, to me, is where the juice is worth the squeeze. And now we get, okay, where does Cody go as a main event level heel? Again, we need to see things we haven't seen before. Randy Orton, we've seen the voices in his head. And here's what's wild. Like, the people are singing Randy's song. So, like, why would we take this moment as a veteran to turn Randy? Now, here's what's interesting to me about this. We just finished the experiment of taking a longtime veteran and finally turning him heel. And it didn't really work because the people still loved him. When it comes to Cody, there is still very much this mixed reaction, and it's growing by the day. Think about what happened Friday night. The people were cheering Randy Orton. It's kind of reminding me of when Becky turned on Charlotte. They were supposed to be mad with her, but they loved Becky making this particular move. So I think, not a fan necessarily of this moment for Randy. I am interested to see who was the person he talked to, who's behind it. Now, if we really want to make it a thing, the person he should have been on the phone with was Triple H. That is what, because this whole, hey, wrestling has more than one royal family. Cowboy Bob Orton being the person you had the conversation with means zero, zilch, nothing. We're not moving the needle with this. But if Triple H is the guy that had the conversation with Orton, we now move into 2026 Vince McMahon. And I know we're not supposed to mention that name, but the idea when Vince leaned into this whole thing of Brett screwed Brett and all of that, if Triple H dares to lean into what the court of public opinion is saying, we got a whole new thing on our hands. Because now the people can be mad with Triple H. He doesn't have to come out every week, but he certainly can remind the people, hey, I am the guy in charge here. So I would prefer Randy not being the heel in all this, giving us some sympathy for Randy, not doing the turn until WrestleMania. I would have loved to have seen Drew retain the championship, but we all know that Cody versus Randy Orton is the far bigger match. So, yeah.
Fair. Moving away. I was going to ask another question, but moving away, because we could talk about this bit for forever, for real. I mean, it was going to be about the whole importance of having a standout face and heel, the way the crowd reacts to certain things, but it still leans into the next topic I'm going to talk about, which helps. Over in AEW, of course, we had Revolution over the weekend. All in all, a great show. So many things happened. I was calling it Reveal-lution because there were so many people that came out after matches. The first three, someone, Ronda Rousey, Will Ospreay return, Kenny Omega's back, all of that, all sorts. But we've also seen Swerve has, turned heel. He's now the most dangerous man again. And, he's got a new, coming out to a new theme. Prince Nana's not jumping around, dancing, doing the swerve and all that kind of stuff. And I asked Gerard this question last time, I believe. But Mex, do you feel as though that was the right thing for AEW to do in having Swerve go this way in terms of his character?
Yeah, I think Swerve does his best work as a heel character. He's allowed to kind of be a bit more disrespectful with it, and like there's a certain swagger that comes out with that. And whilst they've got, beloved people like Kenny Omega, which we're definitely going to see a match between Swerve and Kenny Omega. We're definitely going to see, obviously, we saw Brody King, someone they're looking to kind of push up the card. And then we've got some other maybe young and upcoming baby faces, one that he's approached in Kevin Knight, that is like, can I almost corrupt him, get him on side, because he is being touted as the next guy sort of thing, if Swerve wants to get back into kind of having a faction and stuff. So yeah, I think it's a really good role for him, based on the, I guess, dynamics of the top of AEW as well. Moxley is basically a baby face at this point. Will Ospreay's just come back as a baby face. Kenny Omega is a baby face. Hangman Adam Page is a baby face. So with just MJF, Swerve is, I guess, the other kind of top baby face, and then you've got heel, and then you've got Okada. So just to balance out that top of the card as well, it makes sense. So yeah, I the only thing from the weekend, it was kind of, and they could get there, so I won't jump the gun too much, but I thought it was kind of funny how two men vying over the most dangerous man in AEW are having just a singles match. Like, where was the freedom, the stipulation that allows them to show how dangerous? And of course, this will now take us into another conversation of how many stipulation and violence and blood do we need to see on an AEW card. That's another conversation. Two men arguing over who's the most dangerous should not be having a traditional wrestling match, surely.
Surely not. Surely not. A great match it was, but yeah, it could have been so much more, and should have been so much more in terms of stipulation and and all of those things. But you mentioned the Kevin Knight and Swerve approaching Kevin Knight. Kevin Knight now a two-time trios champion. Now this time with Mystical instead of Hangman Adam Page. Swerve, we've seen Swerve approach him, talk to him in the background. Gerard, what do you think could be the outcome with this one? Is it a foregone conclusion? Are we going to see Kevin Knight, side with Swerve, or is this a way to kind of build Kevin Knight into just having a rivalry with Swerve?
It's interesting because I think back to the match they had a few weeks ago, which I think was kind of a proverbial proving ground kind of thing to see just how big can Kevin Knight be. It's interesting because they have been kind of painting this story on commentary of Kevin Knight being more aggressive, having this almost cocky attitude. Now he's dressing a little bit different and he's talking a bit different and all of those things. I think a rivalry with Swerve has potential, but it has to lead somewhere. And I feel like it has to lead ultimately. I don't want to see Kevin Knight as a heel. I love the guy. Great guy. But it would bring a different element to AEW and to what Kevin Knight could do. Now, does this lead to perhaps another Swerve faction? Listen, the last Swerve faction in AEW really didn't mean a whole lot. It was literally the land of the misfit toys. We don't need that. A tag team with Kevin Knight isn't necessary. Now, granted, Kevin Knight has been winning championships as a tag team star in New Japan and, of course, in AEW. If Kevin Knight's going to be a breakout star, then it would need to involve one of two things, either a win over Swerve or potential guidance from Swerve. But I don't get that Swerve wants to share his spotlight with anybody. So this is going to be interesting to watch. And I like what Kevin Knight is doing. I like seeing him as a champion, but there is an inconsistency between all of this talk of arrogance and confidence and him being this nice guy hanging out with, of all people, Speedball Mike Bailey, who is lily white and pure as the driven snow. So somewhere in here, we're going to have to figure out, somewhere in here, and I mean, he's a great guy, but we're going to have to figure out where's the consistency with what Kevin Knight is presenting and in terms of attitude and how this translates in the ring. You can't keep being friends with, Speedball Mike Bailey, and yet you're the one who talks all of your stuff. Don't know.
True. I think he's adding a nice angle and complexity to their tag team, as you say. What's interesting is we're having this in AEW, and in WWE we're having a very, very similar thing. And I'm not saying this to say someone's copied the other. I really don't think it's I think it's literal coincidence where Kofi Kingston is approaching the nice high flyer that is Javon Evans. Mex, do you feel as though these types of things, these types of interactions, conversations with the veteran, the former world champion, with the young up-and-comer who probably needs a bit more character, maybe a bit more aggression, maybe a bit more attitude, do you think these things have to happen this early on for these two in Javon Evans and Kevin Knight?
If I'm to look at who needs it more, Kevin Knight. is the one that needs it more, I would say. Trevon Evans is in such a good place where he's basically being allowed to go out there and just be himself. He goes out there and he gets giddy with the fans and giggling at his own jokes, and it's just like he's just become such a lovable character to the main roster audience just by being himself. Whereas Kevin Knight, and obviously Kevin Knight, I guess, has been on screen in a bigger capacity for a longer period of time through his time in New Japan and his time on TNA. Like, Kevin Knight is just a fantastic wrestler. And I'm not sure we know much more about him apart from that.
Right.
You know,
right.
Went through the dojo in the LA dojo for New Japan, done some New Japan stuff, you know, done some TNA stuff. He's now at AEW. And when at the time when the Hurt Syndicate were, I think, like I was like, he has to join. He has to go there. It was just for the character. We obviously him as the kind of the Cedric role, the young kind of upstart in there that they can mold and, you know, one day become a world champion. Yes, he'll fulfill that. But I think he needed that development from those guys as a character to kind of become more than just a wrestler sort of thing. So I'd still say Kevin Knight needs it. The Swerve approaching him was interesting to me. I too have reservations about Swerve being a faction leader, because right now the evidence across WWE and AEW doesn't point to this works out well for him. And from some things I think he said fairly recently, is like, I don't want to be in that position. I don't want to kind of lead people sort of thing. So yeah, as cautious as I am as him being a faction leader again, I do think Kevin Knight maybe won't happen right now while he's a trios champion, but that little period before they won the first trio championship, I was thinking, okay, Jet Speed have went for the tag titles a couple times here. They've been in and around the scene. They've had good matches. We haven't learned any more about Kevin Knight. Like on screen as a character, he hasn't developed. So maybe we need to do something like that. And like you said, Gerard, or I think Adrian, you said that. Sorry, I think he is a baby face. Like, I want to see him as a baby face. I don't want to see him as a heel long term. But if the heel stuff in the short to mid term is going to make him a better character before an eventual turn back, then I think it's necessary.
For sure. Speaking of Kevin Knight, you know, you mentioned TNA, his time in TNA. Someone else who had a debut in TNA. I try so hard not to do it whenever his name's mentioned, but I can't help myself. Sosa. Bang. Ricky Sosa, of course, the Belgian sensation that burst onto the scenes, I guess, early this year when his entrance went viral at the start of the year. He's been wrestling now for about coming up to 4 years, I think. Made his debut in TNA over last week, I believe it was, during their tapings. Gerard, you've seen so many times and worked with people, Kevin Knight being one of them, Queen Aminata, a few others over time that have had these, and very specifically, TNA debuts and the like. You know, it's not set in stone that is signed with the company or anything like that. We don't know whether that's happening. It might happen. It might not. Who knows? But how important are those types of moments in a young person's career? You know, and what do you feel goes through their minds when they're approaching this type of moment?
Sure. You know, we would be lying if we said that every wrestler just wanted to be independent. Of course not. You want a national television debut, an international television debut. You want some company to get behind you and take who you are and bring it to the masses. And I think, you know, with all of the talk that's been going on around Ricky Sosa over these last couple of months, you know, to see him finally show up on US television, being able to fully be Ricky Sosa. You know, everybody's talked about this entrance, the theme music, all of the things. To be able to bring that is massive. And so in terms of what's going through their mind, it very much has to be, do the people in this audience understand who I am? You know, do they? Because let's think about this. most times when you come to any larger company, you don't get to fully come not just as you are, but then on top of it with your same music and get the same response on day one. So shout out to all of my friends in that Atlanta crowd who understood the assignment. That was not a thing that TNA could tell them ahead of time. Hey guys, when this guy comes out, I want you to do this and I want you to say this. And I did. No, there are no dress rehearsals for that. It is, and it's also a test for TNA to see, hey, all of this internet hubbub, is it really a thing? Or is it just for this small specific group of people? And so I think for Ricky Sosa, much like we've seen any other superstar who debuts on a national platform, the question is, will they know who I am? Will they respond to me? Or will it be crickets? Think about this. If Triple H, when he came back in 2001 from injury, or 2002, when he came back from injury, if he's wondering, will the people know me? Clearly somebody who's never been in that spot is wondering that. And so I think for Ricky Sosa, for TNA, this was this moment where they went, oh, people are paying attention. Oh, they got it on the first try. Okay, let's see what else we can get from Ricky Sosa. And, you know, think about this. TNA did the thing that nobody else was willing to do, which was give this guy a chance. Everybody was talking about this guy needs to go to NXT because of what NXT could do with him. And think about it, you know, NXT is definitely a space, dare I say, for the culture. So it would have made sense. But here's what makes more sense. We know that TNA is highly connected to WWE. They have a great partnership. If he lands this right in TNA, rest assured, at some point in the PC, we'll hear Sosa. We'll hear all of that. It'll happen. And because the fans are very smart in Orlando, they'll take it to a whole new level. Not to mention, let Booker T get wind of it. I've already told you, Booker T makes stars. I mean, we're not screaming about Trick. We're not screaming about Oba. We're not screaming about Stephanie Vicor and all these people. If Booker T doesn't lend his sauce to what's happening. So if he gets wind of Ricky Sosa, coupled with that NXT crowd, Sosa's going to be a problem. But I think Sosa gets to prove what he can do on a national level with TNA. Now, as we all know, you're going to have to be more than just an entrance. But an entrance gets you through the massive door. I mean, let's face it, an entrance made an entire career for a certain warrior who's ultimate. But for everybody else, you got to prove that there's actually steak with the sauce. And if Sosa can do that, we got another young star in our hands. And it won't take much for WWE to grab him.
The beauty of what happened, sorry, Max, I believe we're probably even going to say the same thing. I was going to say this. The beauty of that debut and that level of that chance for him to be seen on an international scale, international TV, all of that, is that we got to see what a lot of people wouldn't have seen by now. And as much as the internet is the internet, and a lot of things, clips and whatever else fly around, not everyone sees everything, or not everyone pays attention necessarily. Not everyone goes to find certain things. You still have to find a lot of things in order to see. As I said, Ricky Sosa has been doing his thing for at least 4 years now. And in the last few months, the start of this year, we've seen him all over Europe. He's been killing it in France, of course. He's been in the UK very recently. He's here actually this week. He's now been in America. He's already booked for House of Glory during WrestleMania weekend as well. All of these things. What that TNA debut did was show us what he can also do in the ring, and he isn't just an entrance.
Right.
Mix. We've seen the likes of Leon Slater do the same thing. in terms of the TNA debut. Now he is where he is. We've seen it with so many of us. We're very close to all of these guys that are in the European British scene. What have you seen of Sosa that lets you know that it is more than just an entrance?
Yeah, that's a great point, because I was very excited to see that he could wrestle. Like, he could actually go in the ring.
Good.
So a little backstory, like in December last year, I want to say, Kuro came onto the wrestling show. We interviewed Kuro. We had a great chat with him. He was promoting a match with Michael Oku in January that they had in APC in Paris. And Ricky Sosa was with him. Ricky Sosa came to the studio as well. And we brought Ricky Sosa onto the sofa for the last 5-10 minutes and stuff. And he was a super shy kid. I think Ricky was maybe 20, 21. And he was basically just saying, yeah, he's just going to keep working, got his head down and everything like that. And he actually said, I'm debuting like a new entrance this weekend of when we wrestled at the time. So I hope it goes well. Like, I hope, it looks good and stuff. And this was the new song. This was the entrance that he was debuting. And I think he had taken inspiration from Kuro, because if you've seen any of Kuro's matches in his entrance, Kuro has the aura. Ricky Sosa's is one for the culture for sure, but I think Kuro's placement of his entrance is fantastic. And yeah, I guess everyone's jumped on Ricky Sosa stuff, and then we've seen him wrestle now, and they thought, okay, he can actually wrestle as well. And then obviously he's got the TNA, like you said. It's brilliant that these guys are, they've got the exposure. And from what Kuro told us at the time, WWE coming back to France over the last 2 years has really reinvigorated that French scene and kind of the European scene in general. So, people always say like, oh, they pick where they go and this, that, and the other. Why didn't it come to here? But like, it's really worked for these guys. Kuro as well has bookings over WrestleMania weekend, which is great for these guys as well. But yeah, it's all about building that pipeline, making sure like these next guys are getting the opportunity, like we were saying earlier. Like, use someone like OBA to prove that there is a road for these other younger talents that are still trying to make it. Leon Slater is someone we've all talked about for the last year. All of a sudden, we're hearing Leon Slater isn't taking any more bookings. As far as I know, I think Leon Slater's contract is up maybe just after summer in TNA. So I think it's fairly obvious where he lands, if he doesn't renew his contract at TNA. But we have to kind of keep showing that there is a pipeline, there is a road to the top. And yeah, the talent is clearly there. The talent is clearly there. But yeah, big up to Ricky, because all the opportunities that have come his way, he got in the door with a fire entrance, but he's proven that he belongs in the room with his actual talent.
Yeah. I can see, the inspiration, with the WWE going to Paris and doing the things that they've been doing there, the likes of Akuro doing his thing. And of course, you've got, Ilio LaFleur as your NXT speed champion. He only went there at the start, I believe it was the start of this year or a few months ago, and boom, straight away, he's got a belt. He's doing great things. So I'm sure the French contingent of wrestlers are very much inspired, very recently with a lot of things.
One other thing I'll add, Kuro did tell us, like, obviously, if the chips fall this way, this is how they would like to do it. But I've never heard anything like this, and I thought it was brilliant. He said the plan is actually for them all to end up in different places to build several roads into different companies.
Love that.
This is what he said to us. Like, if obviously we got LaFleur in NXT, if let's say Kuro got to AEW, if someone else went from France, got to New Japan, all of a sudden we're building roads to everywhere. So like, it's not just one place. Yeah. And I just thought, what a great mentality for these young wrestlers to have. Like, they're already thinking at 20, 21 years old, how can I help the people behind me? How can we make French wrestling or European wrestling even bigger by not all just going to one place, but let's spread around the world. So yeah, it is so important, man.
Insane. I mean, we've seen it happen, but I'm sure it wasn't an intent. You know what I mean? So, Will Ospreay, New Japan, and Pete Dunne ended up in WWE, and we've seen other people go to different places, but I'm sure it wasn't a sit down and an intent of let's do it like this. So for a group to have that mentality, and like you said, they're young themselves. So how they're already thinking about the ones behind them is crazy, and it's great to know. We're going to end this one on a very bit more of a disappointing note. This is a bit crazy, but it's one of those things. I'll leave Gerard to speak on this one actually, because it's something that he's mentioned time and time again. Ricochet found himself in a spot of bother yesterday on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Of course, he lost his AEW National Championship after the Battle Royal match at Revolution. There was a backstage segment that went online, him complaining as obviously in character that he's lost his match and lost the title, blah, blah, blah. Comments from fans or viewers, not maybe fans, coming in left, right, and center. Ricochet, being the Twitter menace that he is, decided to respond to one of the tweets. The tweet came from a Canadian person. I can't remember if it was a male or female. I completely forget. But they are very much open about the fact that they have multiple sclerosis, MS, as it's known for short. Ricochet responds with, "I'm glad you have MS." He then, after the backlash and whatever else, I believe there was a tweet from him as well talking about, I'm paraphrasing massively here, but basically talking about the amount of, abuse that he receives online and all the rest of it, and kind of basically saying, if you can't take it, don't give it, to maybe try and justify his comments, I don't know. Gerard, I'll leave it with you to give your thoughts on all of this, because as I said, you've mentioned this so many times before.
Yeah, this is one of those cases where you shoot yourself in the foot repeatedly. And when you keep doing this, at some point, those who have any sort of ability to analyze patterns can sit back and realize, okay, this is where the problem lies. I will go here, and so for one, there's a single thing called decency that it feels like we all should learn how to operate with. But as my mom would so eloquently say, common sense isn't exactly common. The idea that anyone feels like it's okay to justify why a person has a disease that they didn't ask for, that they didn't do anything to contract, is wild, and it's irresponsible. I will go so far as to say this. This is one of the reasons why the WWE ensures that they put their people through training in terms of how to behave on social media. Because there's the understanding that, hey, you're human, you do whatever. However, you're representing a company, you're representing a brand, and this is behavior that we will not tolerate. When you allow people to just operate with the Wild Wild West, or as the Wild Wild West, these are the kinds of crazy things that happen. And I think, there's a thing where people, want to protect the brand, be in character, all that type of thing. But there's a level of decency with which to do that. I think it's crazy that Ricochet would even remotely think that, let alone post it. And here's what's wild to me. We just watched Trey Miguel literally get fired for things that he said years ago that he's had a chance to recover from, but AEW didn't want to take the chance with that. But you seem comfortable allowing someone who just held a championship and was featured on your pay-per-view to say things like this with seemingly no repercussion. Now, in fairness, I don't know what conversations are happening behind the scenes. Now, I also haven't heard AEW post something to repudiate this either. So I think, yes, AEW has to do a better job of corralling their people so that they don't make these kinds of irresponsible and asinine posts. At the same time, there's a level of individual responsibility that's needed. Ricochet knows better. And if he doesn't, then he should probably just delete his account. Because if you are so sensitive that you feel like it is okay to make these kinds of deplorable statements, that's a reflection on you. And hey, if you can't take the heat, get out the kitchen. The reality of it is, no, I don't think that fans should just say whatever they want to entertainers in terms of endangering their life, things outside of decency, etc. But can you heckle? Can you say, hey, you're bald, blah, 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 blah? Like, of course, that's the nature of the beast. And it is the responsibility of the entertainer to be able to go, I don't have to respond to this. This is in jest. Maybe it's not in jest, but the responsibility and ownership lies on the person with the spotlight to always take the proverbial high road versus depending on a fan who doesn't have that much skin in the game anyway. Now, be clear, human decency is human decency, okay? But I don't recall in this exchange whatever fan attributing and justifying a disease that is seemingly incurable for that. There's just no way to justify this. And moments like this, and moments like what we saw Thursday night over at OVW, and other moments are reminding us that some of these wrestlers are just simply not good people. And, consider that, fans and friends, when you're deciding, hey, how am I going to support these people? How am I going to stand up for them? Consider all of that. I hope he makes some sort of apology. I hope that he's willing to get some help and things like this. But again, if you're going to renege on a contract that you signed with someone for making a deplorable statement about someone's lifestyle who has since made changes and been public about those changes, you need to have that same energy. You need to have that same energy with Ricochet. And if you're not, it's a lot to be said for that.
And this was my thing as well. That same energy, with Trey Miguel. We've seen Ricochet, have many incidents where it's kind of stepping over the line a little bit or pushing the border as in terms of responding to fans and all that kind of stuff over Twitter and all the rest of it. Max, do you think it's important that AEW does or says something about this situation?
They should, but they probably won't, which then enables Ricochet and the talent in the future to just know there's nothing that, I need to, there's no barrier here. There's no ceiling. I can say whatever I wish, sort of thing, which is a shame. Like, ultimately, and people argue like if they're role models or not, you're someone that's on TV every week. You're a role model to some. You see what I mean? Like it's that as well. Like I feel like you can be witty and you can be in gimmick and you could even be disrespectful without being real life, with some of these things. If the person has obviously put that this is what they're going through on their social media, like you should be of a certain your talent should enable you to be able to insult that person without having to use a real life situation. If you're really kind of good at what you do, So this for me, this is me hearing about this. I didn't even know that this happened. So it's quite a shock that he would do something like that, especially for someone that I feel, and maybe somewhat justified, has been very whiny over the last few years. maybe with situations that have happened to him and his missus and this, that, and the other. But it's just like, you want to be treated a certain way online, but this is how you're treating people online.
Yeah.
You know, who's going to lead by example here, sort of thing. You would expect the person that's on TV on a big contract to be doing just that. You know, someone that's an elder statesman of the sport, if we're being real at this point. But yeah, it's quite disappointing actually to hear that was his rebuttal. And granted, I will say that, you know, fans need to also learn where to draw the line and show respect to performers and people online in general. I think too many things are said via keyboard that fans wouldn't dream of saying to people in real life.
Right.
But at the same time, you know, you can't fight fire with fire. Someone here has to be the responsible adult and, like Gerard was saying, show common sense. AEW should 100%, you know, have some level of repercussion for that, you know, but they won't. And yeah, we've seen them handle these things or not handle these things in the past. I just think right now they've got a good batch of people in and around the company that don't want to war each other as the guys of 2020 and 2021 were doing. But I don't think they've actually built those policies in place to stop something. When something does happen, how do we deal with it? I don't think those things still exist in AEW. And I'll say I don't care. When I had the opportunity to interview Bryan Danielson, I want to say maybe it's 2023 now. And he mentioned that one of the reasons he's helping AEW in the back is basically to build such policies.
Yeah, I remember this.
Because there isn't. The place is a madhouse. Like some of the stuff he said, which I won't mention, like that goes on. He just said he's coming from where he's coming from. He's bringing what he's learned of how, I guess, a big company is run and trying to help them put those things in place, because when he arrived in AEW, certainly they weren't there. So yeah, but yeah, I think Ricochet should know better. That's the bottom line. He should know better to kind of rebuttal with that. Rebuttal if you must, but that's not the one.
It is a shame. It is a shame, and as we all believe, you know, there is certain things that, you know, both sides have to take responsibility for. And when I say both sides, I don't mean that specific fan, because that their comment was nothing abusive or whatever else, but just fans in general that have made some, you know, abusive comments, whether that be to Ricochet or other wrestlers. And then the wrestlers, those that are being abused, those who have the space to respond, those who have the magnifying glass on them, need to be able to, respond better or just not respond at all. And yeah, places AEW needs to have these types of things, some kind of policies, some kind of training, some kind of consequences to these types of things happening and going south. Sadly, this is where we're ending it. We've talked about all the good stuff. OBA is about to start, or has begun. Let's leave that on a positive note. But also, Gerard, let the people know where else they can find you as well.
For sure. You can always find me at Bonnerfied on the socials, Instagram, Facebook, X, TikTok. You can definitely find me in all of those spaces. Just dropped a new episode of the podcast today, Bonnerfied Conversation. So make sure you guys are checking that out. Just dropped a reel of a recap from last night's Monday Night Raw. So you guys will definitely want to check that out. This Sunday, Ashe Wrestling returns. Very excited about that. Some great matches scheduled to take place, so you don't want to miss that. Again, that is this Sunday, Charlotte, North Carolina, AsheWrestling.com. You want to check that out. And all kinds of other really cool things are on the horizon. So again, make sure you're just following me at Bonnerfied across all of the social spaces.
Max, where can they find you, my friend?
WrestleMania UK on all your social media platforms. Doing a real push on Instagram, trying to get to some type of milestone. So hopefully everyone can follow on there. And yeah, YouTube as well. Got a video coming out later today of my reaction to that Brock Lesnar OBA FEMI segment. So yeah, WrestleMania UK on all social platforms.
Nice. And of course, you know, you can find me on Black Wrestling Alliance on Instagram. Look out for something different as well at some point this week. We're trying to take WrstlXtra to TikTok.
Yes.
You heard it here first.
Very necessary.
Some of the same clips that you see, we'll be throwing them on there, seeing where that can go as well. And of course, you can catch us here on a Tuesdays on the Black Wrestling Alliance YouTube channel. Guys, thanks for joining us. It's been a good one, and we will see you again next time.